Today's episode is brought to you by RLA Polymers and Gripset. For peace of mind when waterproofing, trust Gripset's 38FC, the king of membranes. 38FC has been the industry benchmark for years and is rigorously tested internally and through certified NADA laboratories, giving you verified peace of mind. Developed alongside contractors, 38FC has confirmed coverage of 10 square metres per pale and adheres to AS 4858 and AS 4654 compliance. With a quick 1 hour recode time, you can get the job done in record speed without compromising on quality. Don't fall for the copycat products. Trust Gripset's 38FC, the king of membranes. Hey everybody, Mark here from Tiling Connect. Welcome back to the show. More importantly, welcome back to the program. We have another couple of industry rock stars with us today. I have the pleasure of introducing and welcoming Stephen Grech from Elevate in Melbourne and Yandi Milans from RLA Polymers and Gripset, who I believe is in Adelaide today.
Correct.
Excellent, got that right. We might start with you, Yandi. Can you introduce yourself, mate? I know who you are, but the community may not. I'm sure if you do. Can you tell us about yourself, mate, and where you're from and what you do for RLA Polymers and Gripset?
Yep, so thanks for the intro. I'm Yandi Milans. I'm the technical support and training manager for the RLA and Gripset sort of business. In my role, it's pretty broad. So obviously the training side is pretty self-explanatory. So I help our internal team with training events, develop training, and the biggest piece of that, I suppose, is the GAPP training that we're going to speak about today. My background, I was a contractor starting tiling and waterproofing in '98. Have had different roles within industry since then, and here we are.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Stephen, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm a trainer in the Cert 3 in construction waterproofing. I've had my own business doing bathroom renovations over the years. I started out probably as a young lad, like many tradies, with my father. Started tiling or handing out tiles to my dad when I was around 6 years old. At 15, he said, "Do you want to keep tiling and working in construction?" I said, "No, I'll go to uni." Went to uni, was in corporate for about 10 years, ended up as a national sales manager for a company, started having kids, didn't want to do that anymore. So I decided to start my own business, renovation business, and that triggered me going down that rabbit hole of training. So I wanted to get qualified. So I got my Cert 4 in construction, building and construction, went on to do Cert 3 in wall and floor tiling, and then the Cert 3 in construction waterproofing. And that basically provided an opportunity for me to start training. I got offered an opportunity at NMIT back then, started training as a little side hustle, and I haven't looked back. I've been doing that since 2016, and I then decided to start my own training business, which is Elevated.
Mate, phenomenal. Thanks, lads. Brilliant. We've got a cast of many people here with lots of years of experience, and I love training. It's one of those topics that I think the industry needs more of, and the more training we can provide, I think the greater and more powerful we have contractors and resellers out there in the marketplace. So I think the best place for us to start really is why we're here today. And of course, that is to talk about the GAPP training course. I might pass it over to you, Yandi, and if you could perhaps give us a little bit of a rundown of what the GAPP training course is from Gripset, and who is it for, and more specifically, why does this topic matter, mate? Share some details with us.
Yep, so the Gripset GAPP training was a program that was developed, sort of started, I reckon, around 2016, 2017. The founder of Gripset Industries at the time, Phil Scardino, had put some data together. And what we found was, I think it was an 8-year period that the data that he had really about, we had an influx of waterproofing products hitting the Australian market. We had a lot more waterproofing specialists in the Australian market. So people that will specialize in waterproofing, be that, plumbers or Tiders waterproofing or standard waterproofers, so more products, more waterproofers. So we expected the trend of failures and, issues within waterproofing and leaks and all those sort of things to sort of start driving down. But what we actually found was, or what he discovered was, we were getting more defects and we're getting more issues. So it was really a question of why, and what can, we do as a good corporate citizen to try and shift that and change that situation. So the answer was pretty obvious. It was, it was just a low knowledge base and understanding of the waterproofing application. So GAPP was developed, and very intentionally, it was a fee for service training, service that we wanted to provide, where we really just wanted to deal with people that wanted to have skin in the game, that were serious about lifting, the work practices that we had within waterproofing. And that's sort of where we ended up with the GAPP program. And it's been a very successful program for us and continues to grow and evolve. And we're very happy with the part that we're playing within the industry, to make sure that we do our part to improve things, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. Mate, one of the things I want to pick up on there, and it's a prominent thing that I haven't seen before in the industry, but is pay for service, right? So traditionally, and you know that I worked for RLA back in the heyday, the pre, modern RLA, and we used to run a lot of training courses around waterproofing, and we used to get some fairly good numbers attend a lot of these courses, a lot of contractors and builders, and even DIY people. How do you think, or how is it today? How is it accepted that, hey, I've gone from the days of it not being free, so to speak, but today where there's a fee for service, are you finding people are embracing that, or is it something that you still need to, massage through the industry?
Well, it's a bit of both. So you'll find that there's, and we continue to do what we call the applicator training, right? Where you go into a store, or we might have someone go out on site, and it's really an opportunity for the suppliers and the manufacturers to, demonstrate what our products are, what they do, how to use them at a very sort of entry level or basic sort of, level. So we still continue to do that, and it's still a very important part of, supplying and selling waterproofing products and other products, right? So you give someone an overview. Yeah. Look, we've got a TDS, we've got instructions. This is what the product looks like. This is how it's installed, and things like that, and some, touch and feel and those sort of things. So we still do a lot of that, all the time. But when it comes to the fee for service, so you have a percentage of contractors, builders, and other industry professionals that will come in that they don't bat an eyelid to the fee part, right? So they see value in upskilling, they see value in confirming what they already know, hearing firsthand from really, when it comes to the products themselves, the manufacturer is an expert in that space, right? So we work closely with R&D, we know all the mechanical properties, we know all the processes that, we go through as a manufacturer to ensure that the product's fit for purpose. We understand exactly why the details in the TDS are as they are, why you need to install it this way. So, for a lot of people, it's an opportunity for them to hear firsthand from the manufacturer, ask questions, challenge us, any of those things. And of course, we do a full day hands-on as well, which then confirms what we've done in the theory in a practical session to further sort of elevate their understanding and practices and tips and tricks and all those sort of things. But sometimes you do have to massage it, right? Sometimes it's not understood because it is unique. It is a little bit different. So sometimes there is that, there's these value adds as well in the training. So we're hoping that you get value out of the sessions themselves. That's the first and foremost. We go to great lengths to make sure that the sessions are, intense and you're going to get something out of them, right? We're very outcome driven. And then there's other things that we do to add value to those that, come in and do the GAPP program.
Yeah, nice. No, awesome. I see it as sort of like a good, better, best proposition. So, you can go into a store level and get some really good and if not better training. But if you want the best, I think we all know, and Stephen, you'll probably support us here on that, is that the best options in life are the ones that you usually pay for. So, and that, that usually speaks volumes to a lot of different aspects of everything. So,
yeah, I couldn't agree more on you paying for these types of this type of training. A common problem that happens out in industry is when you run free training, the big problem that I get feedback on is you'll have 20 guys sign up and then 5 show up on the day. So if you don't have skin in the game, you're probably not going to take that training too seriously. And one great thing that Gripset do is that training, that 1 day hands-on training, they have got a full day of using Gripset product. That's not free, right? So they're coming in literally from say 9 o'clock in the morning to 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's non-stop using their sheet systems and other products.
Yeah, wow. Incredible, gents. Well, one question that is burning from what you've already said so far today, I think going back to the grassroots of the conversation, but why is waterproofing and surface prep critical in construction?
You want to take that one, Shandy? You want me? I'm happy to take that one.
I can answer it from a manufacturer's perspective, but if you want to go ahead just more generally, Steve, like you deal with this every day.
Sure. So the question about why is waterproofing for starters important? I think it's important to understand that waterproofing alone is not the key element that we need to consider. It's actually construction waterproofing. I mean, when you think about it, a waterproofing membrane, it's 1.2 millimeters thick. Yeah. If the actual building is not designed correctly, the 1.2 millimeters really isn't going to protect that building structure. So if you go and kind of do a dive into the NCC, it talks about protecting building elements and making sure really that the building is designed correctly to shed water away from either away from the building externally or to a waste internally. Once you achieve that, which is at the moment quite a challenge in the industry, but let's say we tick that box, then you look at the waterproofing system itself, and the waterproofing system is there essentially to divert water. That's what it's there for. Like there's that word tanking that gets thrown around a lot. So a lot of guys think the waterproofing is there to retain water. And in some situations and applications, that might be the case. But for typical homes, that's not the case. We need to divert the water to the waste. So that can be often a fundamental flaw in the waterproofing system. But if we get that, if we can actually divert the water, get the water away from the building, whether it be down the shower waste or off a balcony, off a rooftop, we're going to ensure that that building stays dry. And that's really what the main objective is.
Thanks, Stephen. Shandy, anything to add to that?
Yes. Yeah, so to add to that from the manufacturer's perspective as well, it's about consistency and achieving an expected outcome. So, we go to pretty great lengths, spend a lot of resource in the testing and confirming that the products are going to do the tasks that they're, created to perform. And if we can't create some sort of consistency out on site through, good surface preparation, good connection with the products to the surfaces, then, you can't have that expected outcome. So, that's the other sort of side of it when it comes to surface preparations more specifically is, it's the foundation for the waterproofing system. And as Steve mentioned, our products vary from, 0.5 mil thick to 1 mil thick. There's not a lot there that's going to be able to manage, massive issues when it comes to structural movement and those sort of, strains on the structure. So yeah, definitely you need to, the products will do what we claim they do, if they're installed correctly. And a big part of that is understanding, what sort of considerations you need to make for the substrates and surfaces that you're going to be installing the products on. Everything from just basic cleanliness, surface stability, moisture content, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it's critical.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about the state of waterproofing in Australia. Of course, I'm not the world's foremost expert on what's happening out there. I certainly have a little bit of a grasp of some of the things that are going on, but let's talk a little bit about, the consequences of, common waterproofing failures. What are the demands for quality waterproofing? Where are the standards sitting? I mean, I know this is a little bit of a round topic with a few different subject matters in it, but it'd be good just to get a feel and an understanding from your perspective, where the market is today and what's happening out there.
Yep. Well, in terms of, I guess, the issues, so common waterproofing failures, you probably don't have to do too much. It wouldn't be too difficult to find data on this, because there's a lot of building defect reports out there from like the New South Wales Building Commission, the VBA. There's the VMIA from an insurance perspective, where you can find information on this. So probably the top three would be just generally failed or missing waterproofing in bathrooms and wet areas. And that would be just due to incorrect installation or just the complete absence of membranes in critical areas. The next one would probably be balconies and rooftop membrane failures, and what the issues for that. Waterproofing systems on external balconies and roof decks often break down, and UV. So a lot of applicators, they don't understand about UV and the importance of actually installing systems that are UV stable. And probably another one would be, and there's more than this, but I'm just kind of rattling off the top ones, would be planter boxes. Planter boxes are another massive problem. Just typically they're prone to failure, often due to poor design. So you often get a planter box in, say, a Class 2 building, and they'll drill a hole through the planter box after it's been waterproofed to run irrigation or electrical cabling for lighting. There's no consideration there for heights and just waterproofing in general. So yeah, I mean, they're probably the top ones in terms of where the failures are happening. Why they're happening, well, that's another, maybe we'll talk about that later, but there's a lot of reasons as to why these failures are occurring.
I think Steve, and thanks for sharing, I think the bigger aspect to the question as well is that, while you mentioned some pretty powerful things that are not happening on a lot of job sites, not all job sites, is the effect that it has on the consumer, the client that's buying the building or buying the house or the apartment or unit, and or then having to go back through the channels to repair it, and or find an appropriate contractor to do the work, find the original contractor who actually did the work. There's this jumbled mess of rectification that is just a nightmare for a lot of people. Shandy, I'm sure that, in your position, you've seen the best and worst of the failures, if there is a best. I can't imagine that there is, but I'm sure you've seen some shockers, mate. Talk us through, your opinion on that subject matter.
Yeah, look, so again, from our perspective as a manufacturer, and sort of the tasks that I need to perform on a daily is looking at a lot of failures and a lot of jobs where things have gone wrong. And, like Steve just outlined, there's a whole raft and all sorts of variables that will cause a failure in a waterproofing application. But I suppose the biggest question that we should ask is why? Like, why are we seeing these things? Why are we continuing to see these things? What's, what is the problem here? And again, it goes back to that original research that prompted the GAPP sort of training in the first place. Is we're not all on the same page when it comes to the considerations that need to be made and the desire to make sure that all the components are put together correctly so we can have a successful outcome, right? And there's a lot, the biggest difference I see today from when we started the GAPP training is that you are hearing from a lot more voices the same type of information. And sometimes it can be as basic as, have you read the TDS? Have you confirmed that the surfaces that you're going to install the product on, that they are fit for purpose, that they're compatible with what you're going to do? Are you engaging with your client? If you're a contractor, are you engaging with the builder? Is the builder on the same page? Does he understand the importance of things being done correctly so you can have the very best chance to do your part, right? So we're seeing a lot of positive, a lot of training, and we need more. Like you said it at the start of this, at the start of the program, we need to have more training. So, we like to think that through providing the GAPP course, that we've had other manufacturers that have also wanted to lift the bar to also offer this type of training, and that we see that as a massive, positive step in the right direction. And you got other industry people like Stephen, for example, his passion for upskilling and making sure that the guys have all the tools that they need at their disposal to have the very best success of having successful businesses and applications. I'll take my hat off to him, and it's a reason why we're very lucky to have him be part of the GAPP program as well. But yeah, look, you're hearing a lot of voices now. There's a lot of people out there. You got the AIW that do a lot of good things around training and sending communications out to a broader audience. Steve, the other thing that he does, he's got an excellent Facebook page, Waterproofing Network. Where how many you up to now, Steve? Members?
We're about 3,500.
3,500. Waterproofing
Fantastic.
professionals, and so that's it's really good. It's good to see, and this is something that was lacking when I was a contractor. You had to seek it out, right? I suppose if I had to pick another thing that I suppose is still contributing to poor practices, and it's and I like to say miscommunication, but I know that sometimes it's flat out intentional, where certain characters out there will just tell the contractor whatever they want to hear, right? So there is no such thing as a miracle product that you can just apply in one coat and it's going to do the job, right? Look at the TDS. If you need confirmation, if there's something that's not clear, contact the manufacturer's technical department. Sometimes you can't trust even the rep to give you the right information, and just confirm information and then talk to people that are in here and doing the training and trying to provide a service to lift the bar. So I'm not sure if I answered the question at this point. I've just rambled on, but
no, mate, you have. But I have a question to ask, which I think is important because it comes up quite often in conversations that I have with contractors all of the time. We can deliver all the training in the world. We can do all of the right things. You can have a contractor or a builder, go about doing all of the right stuff, all of the time. And, they get to a point where they're told, just do it this way. How difficult is it from a contractor's perspective to say no and to walk away from that job?
Well, I think you need to have a strategy behind it. So, I like to say I'm not a big fan of the walk away type of advice. I think you need to do more than just walk away. If you are going to walk away, you need to also try and educate that client, and also just accept that not everyone is going to be like you. Like literally, the reason I was running a little bit late to this session is I had a contractor here, young guy who's only just started his business, and his biggest challenge is the communication of him wanting to provide a good service. So to give an example, he wanted to put a piece of cement sheet on an upstand into sort of a balcony return. So it's exposed timber, structural timber.
Yep.
It's going to get tiled on. You're not supposed to tile directly on structural timber. He put forward to his client, I need to put cement sheet. It's going to take more time. So you need to be compensated for your time. That's fair, right? And he just gets challenged. And all the time he gets challenged. And the challenge that he's presented with is, well, the other waterproofing guy didn't say he had to do that. The other guys, you know, the waterproofing guy and his rep has said that you can waterproof directly onto this timber. And you hear that, he's got that builder, in his experience, he's hearing you don't have to do it more times than you do have to do it. So all of a sudden, this contractor that's trying to do the right thing, he's being challenged because it's the norm, and it's to be complacent and to not, you know, really dig into the detail and understand what the risks are and, you know, how things should be done. So,
Mate, great example. And that's to the point that I was making before. I've had many conversations like that before where, you know, literally I had a client ring me a couple of weeks ago. They found my details on the Australian Tire Council website. And from a consultancy perspective, they just wanted to bounce a few things off me. And one of the very first things we spoke about was, I said, do you have a contract with your contract? Do you have a contract with your contractor on the work that he's doing? Because the questions were all around, he's done some rectification work or some adjustments through the course of installing some products, and the price that he's now wanting to charge me for that additional work is half the price of the original quote. So, and to that point, there was no contract. So again, communication, not talking about, you know, what you contracted to do. I know that's a much broader subject. I get that, but it's still important in, you know, that communication piece and understanding what the person's position is in terms of their application practices and getting the right job done, and then standing behind it for the lifetime of the job. You know, whatever that warranty period is that they're offering, you know, whether it's standard related or over and above. Stephen, I'm not sure if you've got a couple of things to throw in here. I'm sure you do.
Yeah, well, you're right. This is a massive topic, just that question alone. In my experience, just like my current group of students, I've got 20 students in my current Cert 3 in construction waterproofing. And if I have a look back at, I mean, I've been teaching that since 2016. For me, the common denominator actually, when you've got a applicator on site, and actually it doesn't have to be a waterproofing applicator, it can be a tiler, it can be a chippy, it can be any of these trades. For me, the common denominator actually is a lack of business understanding. If you get a tradie who's great on the tools and they decide to basically go out and run a business, let's say obviously a waterproofing business, and the builder puts, like, they basically have to do some type of minor repair, like the example that Shandy's just given, right?
Yeah.
Do you charge for that? And how much do you charge for that? How much is your time worth? What are your considerations, right? There's so many guys out there, to be honest, they're probably working for free or very close to free. And it's not a great business model. And this is a massive problem that we've got in our industry, because there's just guys not charging enough for their time. They don't value their time. And the reason they don't value their time is because they're not factoring in all the additional expenses in running a business. Running a business is not just about going out and slapping some membrane on the wall. That's probably the easy part of it. The hard part is your accounting, your marketing, you know, doing payroll, tax if you've got staff. And then what I find ends up happening is these guys get put under so much financial pressure, you know, and then you start getting corners being cut because they want to move on to their next job. They're underquoting, not spending enough time, and it's just a snowball effect that happens when you don't have that grounding in business.
A quick word from our sponsor. Partner with Gripset and become one of Australia's leading waterproofers. Waterproofing is one of the most in-demand trades. With Gripset's accredited practitioner program, GAPP, you'll be trained and certified in just 3 days. Backed by Australia's leading waterproofing supplies manufacturer and run by trainers with over 20 years of experience within the industry, GAPP gives you a wealth of knowledge. Learn how to identify and prevent dampness and water damage in both residential and commercial structures by exploring the current Australian waterproofing standards, correct preparation of substrates for waterproofing, and how to apply both sheet and liquid membranes with a particular focus on the trickier areas such as joints and penetrations. Upon completion, you will be a fully accredited GAPP applicator and will be able to access exclusive benefits and free business advertising to expand your clientele. Spots are filling up fast. upskill today, visit gripset.com/gap. That's gripset.com/gap, where great applicators get even better. Yeah, lads, again, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. I know that we could spend hours on that topic because there's so much assistance that I think is needed in that space. But I think if I can take the key takeaway from it, and it's been a theme through a lot of the contractors that have been on the Tile and Connect podcast, has been the most important thing you can do when you're starting out is, even if you attend some communication courses or classes through TAFEs, or if that's not your forte and you're not particularly great at it, you're an excellent tradesperson, but you sort of struggle in that space in communication, go and educate yourself and take some courses so that you can be more persuasive, authentically persuasive in your dealings with, builders and clients and and other contractors, because it will absolutely pay off 70-fold in your career as a contractor. Let's deep dive. I think we've touched enough on some of those topics, and I think that's great so far. But I really want to get into the core of why we're here today as well, which is to sort of speak more about the GAPP program and to introduce that a bit more thoroughly so that people have an understanding of it. And I know both of you are very heavily involved in that program. If we could just start with Shandy, perhaps just give us the what GAPP stands for, and just run us through why it was created. I know you touched on a little bit of that earlier, but maybe let's just expand a bit more. And who was it for? Is it done locally? Yeah, give us the nuts and bolts of the GAPP program.
Yep. So GAPP stands for Gripset Accredited Practitioner Program, and as you touched on before, it really is that good, better, best type of offer. So we wanted to, as mentioned, create a training program that the training itself creates value through the content, right? So the way that it runs is we have, and I've got, after this, I'll start my second Zoom session. So last night we had the first Zoom session. So we do 2 Zoom sessions. They run for about 2.5 hours. So it's all theory, about 5 hours worth. That's stage 1. And then that's followed through with stage 2, which is the hands-on component, which is a full day that we run in all capital cities. So Victoria, Brisbane, Sydney, we do Canberra, we do Hobart, Adelaide, Perth, so a lot of that I'll travel around and do those, but we also have a really, very experienced trainers like Steve, for example, in Victoria. And we also have George in New South Wales, which, he doesn't have a training background, but his contracting background is, probably second to none as far as experience, passion for correct practices. And the guys spent the day with him, learning all about the sheet membranes, the best application methods, all those sort of things. So, it's always interesting to me, the uptake. The session last night and the one for tonight, we have a very broad range of different industry people. We have, for example, there's a guy that's, he's an owner builder. He's building his third house, and he's very detail orientated. So, he's been asking some good questions. You can already see he has, the desire to really push best practices, and he doesn't want to have the issue because he's going to live in this place, right? We have that all the way through to, there's a gentleman in Victoria that's a commercial builder, right? So he does massive projects. He had some questions about a childcare center that he's having some issues with, and discussing some solutions for waterproofing around that, and everything in between. So, a lot of waterproofing contractors. Funnily enough, when we first started the session, we did have sort of a bit of a prerequisite that, we wanted everyone to have their Cert 3 in construction waterproofing, because it's really, the terminology and the topics that we discuss are really for people that already have experience. But what we found is we just didn't have enough Cert 3 contractors or applicators out there. So I suppose the flip side of this, if you are listening, if you are a waterproofing contractor, Tyler, and you haven't done your construction waterproofing course, reach out to guys like Stephen and your local training centers as well, because it all complements each other, right? We cover different topics. The Gripset GAPP training, it's really from the perspective of the Gripset product range. But yeah, we do cover all the other topic standards, National Construction Code. We have a lot of case studies of failures that we come across, why they occur, surface preparation techniques and for installing products, why we specify particular systems for particular applications. It's all about the why, which really helps make better decisions when you're out there in the field. If you understand why you need to go through this process, then you're more likely to follow that process, right?
Yep, 100%. Stephen, would love to hear some thoughts on you on this. I know that you're obviously delivering some training hands-on in Melbourne and have been for a number of years. So, yeah, mate, how are you finding, what you're doing with the GAPP program?
Yeah, look, very, very responsive in Melbourne. I would say that everyone who's come through the GAPP training in Melbourne, I dare say everywhere else, but my experience in Melbourne is they actually walk away from that day, and obviously after they've completed their 2 online sessions, actually quite enthusiastic about the industry, which is great to see. I would actually say for a lot of people, especially like anyone who's listening who has a fear of going into the classroom, a lot of tradies don't have positive experiences with classrooms. And that stems, I think, from completing high school, where it's almost like you're a second-class citizen at high school if you're a tradie. Then reality sets in, you go out, you become a tradie, and you're hit with maths, English, reading, all these things, right? So one great thing about GAPP, how it's been designed, is it's designed for people who are out there in industry, and they come in and they realize, hey, hang on, I'm not, this is actually, I get a lot of this content. We do touch on a little bit about Australian standards and the NCC, and we touch on the technical data sheet. But the good thing is we're actually going through some technical data sheet specs, but then we're saying, okay, this is the theory part. Now let's do it. What does that look like in practice? And I think a lot of tradies can relate to that. They think, oh yeah, that makes sense. And there's also that kind of stigma in construction that if you read a technical data sheet, you're somehow inferior because you're just meant to know how to do it. But that's not the case. You have to read, right? I say this to my students all the time. The biggest challenge I have is getting these people in the industry to read. You must read. You're constantly reading. You're finding out how to install it. And then you can rely on guys like Shandy, like you're building up your network. You come in, you do GAPP, you meet guys like Shandy, you meet the local reps. They are your support. They're your network. That's who you need to rely on if you have questions. So that's another massive benefit of coming in and doing something like GAPP training. You're going to build your network. You're going to build a group of people that you can actually rely on when you get stuck. And we all do. I mean, I could rattle off hundreds of jobs I've been on where I just didn't know the answer. I'd read the technical data sheet. I still wouldn't know the answer. I'd have to make a phone call.
Mate, such a really great information that you're sharing there. And I've got to highlight the fact that about making phone calls, and I think many people don't do it often enough. If you get caught in a place where, you're using particular brands of products, I think it's really important to know that you can call, a technical representative or, someone in a technical field to actually ask the question. I think today there's probably twice the amount of representatives out there for a lot of the brands. In particular, RLA's growth has been phenomenal over the last sort of 4 and 5 years since, since Troy joined the business, and, there's been acquisitions and there's more people added to that mix. So I highly encourage any contractors out there, if you're facing a difficulty on site, rather than just guess that you think you know what the solution is, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and make a simple phone call and talk to people like Stephen or Shandy from representatives of Gripset, because I think that's a really important point to ram home about improving your own standards and also the standards of what you're delivering on a job site too.
100%.
Gentlemen, let's get into, and I know we're probably going to cover off a few questions, simultaneously, but that's okay because we're here to talk about the GAPP program. let's talk about if I was a contractor and I was choosing between competitor X waterproofing training program and the Gripset GAPP training program, why am I going to choose GAPP? And yeah, give me a bit of the reasons why.
Well, I think to start off with, it goes back to the origins, I suppose, where, you know, the intention of the GAPP course. So even when I was first, when I've had my first discussions with Phil, when he was really just still mulling over what he wanted to do, for me, it was music to my ears, because as a contractor and as someone that was out in the industry, there just wasn't anything you could compare the GAPP training to. And actually at the time I was, working at a trade school, working with apprentices, and, you know, there was always that piece that was missing for that apprentice's employer, right? So that's great for the apprentice. You know, he has to pay into trade school. It's part of his apprenticeship, all that sort of thing. But a lot of the time was that disconnect of the information that we were sharing that was really just about, you know, the standards and, you know, the practices that we need to follow to make sure that everything is as it needs to be. But there was a massive disconnect with the employer because hadn't gone to trade school. He never had any sort of training in that sort of environment. So for starters, it's a very broad offering. So, you know, and I did a lot of, I've done a lot of our competitors training as a contractor, right? And it gives you a good understanding of what the main fundamentals are when installing a product. But what it doesn't give you is, you know, the case studies and, you know, even when we're talking about the Australian standards and the NCC, like, it's not a detailed look into it. It's more of an overview and an understanding that this exists and this is part of what you do and it's all connected. And if these things don't align, then, you know, you're going to be in a really challenging position as the contractor. How do you overcome these challenges? Where do you go? How can you be guided through this? And, you know, all those sort of things. It's the type of advice. And, you know, the GAPP training, it's not, you know, I don't think I mentioned Gripset maybe twice in a 5-hour session. You know, it's not, it's more about wanting to lift the bar and making sure that we're all on the same page. We go through a lot of detail on what our responsibilities are as a manufacturer and why you can lean on us. And, you know, like that young guy that I had in my office just earlier, right? He's done the GAPP training. He feels more comfortable. He comes in, he has a chat, you know, I've got these challenges, like, what can I do here? You know, and we find ways how we can assist them, how we can, you know, send the same message from a different voice. You know, we'll go out and see your supervisor. We'll go out, talk to your builder with you, you know, and to get them to understand, so we're all on the same page. And then it's the breadth of the content, right? It's the intention of the content. It's, you know, how detailed it is when it comes to the products. You know, like, there's nothing that's off topic, right? There's nothing that's taboo. All the systems, all the products, all the primers, what they do, how they do it, you know, you name it, we cover it. So, and then the way that we run the hands-on, right? Like, again, like, we're super lucky to have someone like Stephen that's interested, and George that's interested, right? And the reason they're interested because they themselves believe in it. You know, they can see it aligns with what their values are in trying to upskill and lift things. And, you know, again, you know, they don't get told what they can and can't say and can't share and things like that. It's a very open discussion, and it's about bringing everyone in, making them feel comfortable. And, you know, understanding that it's a journey, we're all in it together. We all have the same intention. Let's just try and, you know, get to where we need to be as far as quality, you know, installations. That's the bottom line, right? And understanding the difference between the advice you get from someone that just started yesterday and may just be repeating poor advice. You know, the consistency is the main thing. You know, we're going to get you to a point where you're going to understand where we're coming from, what our expectation is as a manufacturer, and, you know, what you can expect from us. So,
yeah, no, awesome, mate. Look, great share. And again, going back to some of the things that you said earlier on in the episode was about, you know, what is our why, right? Once people understand the why behind what's being delivered, then I think they have a greater appreciation for that. And, you know, whether it's building credibility and confidence, or whether it's winning more jobs because you're a preferred applicator, because you've done the GAPP training, or, you know, there's other features and benefits, which I'm not completely across, but I'm sure either of you guys might mention it to me, because I'm sure there's some little golden gems that they get from attending the course. But Stephen, your thoughts on that matter?
Yeah, look, I think it's important that applicators understand that they are the expert, right? When you're applying a membrane, you're the expert. There's no one else applying the membrane, you are. So it's really important that if you choose a system, you are an expert in that system. Now, you might be using multiple systems. You might your scope of works might not be limited to bathrooms and balconies. You might be doing below ground. You might be doing remedial. I don't know. But if you're using a system, at least if I'm using a system, I would want to be an expert in that system. And what GAPP training does is it helps you move along that expert status, becoming a true expert in that range of products. It doesn't mean you're going to be limited, okay, to that range of products, but at least you're an expert or have sound knowledge in that system. I think it's also important that you, when you walk into any retail store, because this has been my experience, the sales guys that are in there, not all of them, but often some of those sales guys are just there to sell you a product. What product they sell you, they don't really care. And again, this comes back to you being an expert. Am I going to buy this product because it's the cheapest product, or am I going to buy this product because that's the correct product for the system that I'm installing? Okay, that's critical. So GAPP training, and I will say there is a lot of great training out there from manufacturers. Why have I aligned myself with Gripset for this training? Because I believe in the philosophy that they're basically pushing. I think their systems are solid, and I think that they genuinely, if they don't have a solution, which is not often, but they won't try and push something on you that's not the correct solution for the problem that you have. And I think you're aligning yourself with people like that is critical.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I really appreciate really appreciate you sharing that. Well, let's talk about industry for a second. And obviously, there's a lot of regulation out there with regards to waterproofing. I know that it was in the limelight a number of years ago when the federal government was looking at what trade areas they were going to focus in on first. And thankfully, waterproofing drew one of the lucky straws when that all came about. And I'm curious to know, obviously, GAPP's been out for some time. How is that backed by industry professionals and experts? And further to that, why is it important to remain and stay compliant as the codes and the standards change?
So yeah, there's a lot to unwrap in that one. But look, at the end of the day,
you've got 2 minutes. 2 minutes, mate.
Yeah, okay, all right, here we go. Look, so and I suppose that's the other, and this is the other thing as well, right? So when we talk about training, this isn't something that's exclusive to coming in to do the GAPP course, right? So, we train every day where, and a lot of the time, funnily enough, when things aren't compliant or when there's, a debate over what the detail is according to the standard, these are all opportunities to learn, right? So I suppose from our perspective as a manufacturer, we really, when it comes to that space of the standards and more generalized industry information, it's more about guidance, right? We offer guidance as far as where you need to go to look, the standard that you need to, have access to, maybe the section that you might find the information of the question that you're asking for, and those sort of things. But, the other thing that, that we benefit from having the GAPP practitioner training is it's the networking opportunities, so we've had, again, Stephen, it's godsend, right, to have that relationship with him, someone that is passionate, that works in that space. And we've had different builders and different contractors that, they've become valuable resources for other people that have done the GAPP course, so it's that connection. And, I've drawn a blank now of what the question was to begin with. But look, at the end of the day, when it comes to standards, they change. And, yes, talk to your manufacturers. I strongly advise also being members of industry bodies like the AIW and, Australian Tile Council, things that are relevant to the field that you work in, because again, they become a resource and they're directly involved with changes in the standards, changing in those fields. So I suppose that's a really good, efficient way to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, your take on that?
Yeah, look, there is a lot of noise going on in the background, especially in Victoria, but I think also at a national level. One thing that I understand that the VBA is looking at doing is making trades that's like carpentry, waterproofing, similar to electrical and plumbing trades, where you need to have CPD, so continued professional development. That's one thing that GAPP training will give you, and that's massively important, because we all know the 20-year guy. He's been waterproofing tiling for 20 years. That guy knows it all. He's been using the same product for 20 years, never changes. And he goes, I've never had a failure. Well, how do you know? How do you know you've never had a failure? Do you go back and call every customer you had and say, hey, have you had a failure? If you have, I'll come out and fix it for free. It's just not going to happen, right? So the only way you're going to be an expert is through continual professional development. You need to get out there. You need to talk to other people. Don't have a fear that you're not the guy who knows it all. I don't know it all. I'm the first to admit I don't know it all. But you know what I have? I have a network of guys that I can call who are experts in certain spaces. I can call them. I can rely on them. How do I get that network? Well, I actually do training. I'm always training. I do different types of training, whether it be through formal accredited training or whether it be through non-accredited training, and which might have CPD attached to it. So when you do that, you also, like I notice a lot of guys who come through the GAPP training as well, they have a thirst to learn. And then they actually, it's surprising. Like they go, I didn't realize there was a standard for waterproofing. I didn't realize about the NCC. They actually get taken aback a little bit. But then what happens, they go, shit, I actually need to lift my game. And then they want to actually learn more. So I've had a lot of guys who've come through GAPP who then enroll and start doing the Cert 3 in construction waterproofing, because they go, I just need to educate myself more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant.
So,
yeah, Stephen, great thoughts there. And it doesn't help that we have states all running their own race when it comes to methodologies, standards. I know there is an NCC, but then you have the levels underneath that where things just change from Adelaide to Queensland, Queensland to Perth, Perth to Melbourne. So it makes it very complex for a contractor to try and navigate their way through all of that, particularly if they're thinking about their base might be WA, but then they're thinking about, tendering for some work in Adelaide or in Melbourne. So it's a different, the rules start to change quite a lot. Gentlemen, you've been great so far today, and I think there's so much content there, and surely you've done an amazing job at representing and promoting and educating and training a lot of contractors out there. I take my hat off to you. I think it's fantastic that we have these facilities inside of manufacturers, but more importantly, Gripset and GAPP have obviously been leading the industry with this type of training. Shandy, I just want to get a final thought from you, and then we might just wrap it up on how to register. If people are excited and love it as much as what all three of us do, how they can get on board and attend one of the training programs.
Yep. So the easiest way to do it is you register your interest on gripset.com/GAPP, and that's GAPP with a double P. Follow the prompts. We do I suppose the thing we didn't touch on is we're pretty limited as far as the size of the sessions when it comes to the practical, because we want everyone to have, a fair share of Stephen's time or George's time or mine. So we generally cap them at around 6 to 8. So we're not, it's not something that we do to try and entice the masses. It's very, result-driven training, like I mentioned before. I suppose the other thing that I didn't mention as well is it's not just, the value you get from educating yourself and upskilling, but there's also other value adds there as well. So, you know, you do the GAPP, you become a GAPP practitioner. We'll put all your details on the Gripset website. If we get phone calls to customer service or the sales team, whatever it may be, then we direct those people through to the webpage. They put in the postcode. If you're working in that area, they're able to then click on your Instagram, see, you know, examples of your work, and then contact you directly through that. So we do try to create additional value, and really, you know, prioritize the guys that have come in and put their money and time aside. You know, it does indicate to us that they're serious, and that, you know, I suppose their practices can be trusted, and we're comfortable enough to put them on our website and promote them as well. So yeah, there's plenty there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Shandy. Stephen, final thoughts for today?
Yeah, I think the final thought would be, firstly, if you're using Gripset and you haven't done GAPP training, well, you want to become an expert on that product, come and do GAPP. Don't have a fear. I'm not a bad guy. I'm pretty easygoing. Come in. I'm sure you will enjoy this training. It's really designed around making practitioners enjoy the experience, learn about the products. We haven't really said it, but we deliver training on the Gripset sheet systems. A lot of waterproofers don't have experience in that space. I can tell you, everyone who does GAPP, at the end of it, they walk away confident that they've now got another product in their artillery, which means you can do more jobs, you can make more money. At the end of the day, we don't go out and do waterproofing. I would love to do other things with my time. I do waterproofing because I need to provide for my family. I want to maximize my money when I'm out there. So you need to have a broad range of products that you're using, and GAPP will help you do that.
Excellent, lads. Today's been fantastic. I really appreciate both of your time. I know you're very busy and you've got appointments post today's episode, but Stephen Grech from Elevate and Yandi Milans from RLA Polymers and Gripset. Until next time, stay connected, and thank you again for appearing on the program.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it.